So when it comes to manifesting, I feel like one of the main things that people try and manifest is a partner or a fulfilling relationship. And this is something that I've actually managed to do. And through doing so, I've realised that there is a much more effective way to do it than the usual manifestation techniques of visualization, of assuming that you already have a specific person. I'm Georgia, and in this video we're going to be talking about how I went from being completely disastrous in the romantic department and constantly attracting people who are just not what I needed, to now attracting an amazing, fulfilling relationship. So this is something that I actually did unintentionally, but a crucial thing to understand about manifesting is that it's not something that you can switch on and off. You don't choose when the law of attraction or the law of assumption, you don't choose when these laws of the universe work. They are always working for us. We are always putting out a certain energy, a certain frequency. We are always holding certain beliefs which attract our reality to us. So it's not a matter of whether we are manifesting or not. It's a matter of what we are manifesting, and it's a matter of whether we are unconsciously bringing things into our life because we don't understand the energy and the beliefs we're putting out, and instead choosing what it is that we want to bring into our life and aligning to that. So whilst I attracted this relationship unintentionally, I can very clearly see what I did, how my energy changed, and what allowed me to attract this relationship into my life. So now that I know how I did this, I can tell you that so that you can hopefully do it consciously and attract the same thing. So let's go back in time a bit. I used to be someone who was very insecure, and I'm not entirely sure why this was the case. All I know is that I used to be very, very insecure. I had very low self-esteem and very low self-worth. And what happened was this ended up being reflected in my dating life. I would constantly attract people who didn't respect me, didn't want to commit, who basically just wanted to mess me around and used me. And all of this was reflecting this lack of respect that I had for myself. And this lack of respect I had for myself, this lack of self-love, it was completely unconscious. I didn't realise it at the time. But that is the energy I had and the energy I was putting out, and that was being reflected back to me with all these different people that were messing me around. So my unconscious belief of being unworthy resulted in this cycle that I would experience where I was basically always attracting the same type of guy. It was like the same guy in a different body. Every time one would go and a new one would come. It was just this cycle I was stuck in, and it was constantly this lack of self-respect being reflected back to me through people who weren't respecting me. And this always resulted in this energy dynamic where I was the one doing the chasing. And I don't mean like literally chasing them because I was too insecure to do that, but on an energetic level, I was the one doing the wanting, the needing. Not because I genuinely wanted these people, I thought I did, but now I realise it was actually because I had this void within me. So I wanted these people to validate me. I was seeking validation so that that validation would make me feel like I was worthy. And that energy, when you really, really want something or really need something, that is a very repelling energy, because basically what you're telling the universe is that you don't currently have that thing, so that energy repels. So when I was putting out this really needy energy, that was certainly not helping my situation. So I was attracting people who didn't respect me and then repelling them as well. So fast forward a few years, I did get into a relationship, and by this point my self-confidence had raised a little bit, and that is probably simply because even though those initial guys were awful and messed me around, the fact that they were giving me attention I think maybe boosted my self-confidence a little bit. Obviously nowhere near enough, but my self-confidence had raised a little bit, and I think that maybe played a part in having this new relationship. So this relationship wasn't bad, but there were still aspects of it I didn't like. There were aspects of the relationship which, in my opinion, constituted a lack of respect for me. So again, this was reflecting back the lack of self-respect that I had for myself. I was still putting out that energy to an extent, and I was getting that energy back in this relationship. So that relationship ended, and going through this breakup was extremely difficult. I found it very difficult to cope with, and what I now realise was the extreme pain that I was feeling. At the time I thought it was because, oh, I love this person, I really want this person. Now I realise that actually the majority of the pain was coming from my ego. So this void that I'd had within me for years, this unconscious belief that I'm unworthy, suddenly this breakup was confirmation of that. To my ego, it was confirmation that I am unworthy, I am unlovable. So this made this breakup feel so painful. It was like my ego was completely breaking down. All of my unconscious wounds that I'd never been aware of, never dealt with, suddenly they were all being opened up again. They'd been triggered by this breakup, and I was being forced to truly feel these wounds. But this is where things started to change for me. Because I was feeling such immense emotional pain, I had no choice at this point but to feel these emotions. And at the time I had been learning more about spirituality, and I think I had read some of Dr. David Hawkins' book, Letting Go, and he talks about how to deal with emotions and how we don't usually deal with them properly because we suppress or repress them. And instead what you actually have to do is let yourself feel them without judgment. So that is what I started to do. I was feeling this immense pain, so over the next year or two, when this pain would keep coming back, I finally learned that instead of trying to suppress it and escape it, that I actually just had to sit with my emotions and let myself feel them, so that that energy, instead of being suppressed and blocking up my system, could be released. The emotion could pass as it is trying to do. And I would also do this when I was speaking to new people who would trigger the same old emotional wounds. Now, because I was so much more conscious when these wounds were triggered, I would again just allow myself to feel them without judgment. I allowed the pain to be there, and I simply just felt it without trying to rile myself up and add to the pain by repeating all the stories in my head. I just simply allowed myself to feel it and allow the emotions to come up. And something very interesting started to happen after I'd been doing this. So as I said, I used to have this unconscious need for validation. I was constantly seeking validation through other people, and that made me very needy. But now, when I would have guys who try and speak to me, and these were guys who in the past I would have sought validation from, now I was not interested. I didn't need them to validate me anymore. And that's because through allowing myself to feel these emotions, I'd started to, without realising, heal my unconscious wounds. And as a natural result of that, my self-worth and self-esteem had started to grow. So because I now felt more self-love for myself and more respect for myself, I suddenly had these standards for myself, and I didn't need these other people to validate me. I'd started to feel whole and complete on my own. And that is the key here. So I finally felt genuinely happy on my own. I wasn't seeking anyone else to fill a void within me. I was totally happy being by myself. And I feel like this is something that a lot of us say to ourselves and we don't necessarily mean. We're like, oh yeah, I don't need anyone else. But the key is you have to actually genuinely feel that. And previously, I'd never felt that before. I always felt like I needed someone to make me feel worthy. But at this point, I actually genuinely started to know what it felt like to feel whole and complete on my own. And now, because I felt whole and complete, I could attract someone who reflected that back to me, someone who reflected my new level of love and respect for myself. And that is exactly what I did. I attracted a partner who is amazing. He is completely loyal, trustworthy, genuine, very clear on what he wants, and just genuinely and generally a very high value person. And I 100% believe that it's no coincidence that I attracted this person at this point in my life, because this new relationship was reflecting back to me the healing that I had done, the new level of love and respect I had for myself. I was putting out a new energy, and that is what attracted that energy back into my life in the form of a fulfilling relationship. And it's funny because this is someone that I have known for years, and I genuinely 100% believe that it would have never happened before, because previously I obviously had this very insecure, needy energy that I was putting out, which wouldn't have matched his energy because he is someone who's very secure and just, as I said, an all-round high value person. So not that I didn't have value back then, just that I didn't have the right energy that would have matched his. My energy would have been repelling. So the moral of this story is that if you want to attract a genuine, fulfilling relationship which lights you up, then the most effective way to do this, and I know it sounds cliche, but it is to focus on yourself and really cultivate that self-love. And I know there's that phrase that people often say where it's like, no one will love you until you love yourself. And whilst I don't believe it's true that you have to love yourself to attract a relationship, I do think that until you cultivate a healthy level of self-love, you may attract a relationship, but that relationship is very likely to reflect back to you your lack of self-love for yourself in one way or another. Our external reality is constantly reflecting our internal reality. Our beliefs about ourselves and about life are constantly being reflected back to us. So if we believe that we are unworthy or unlovable, then that is going to be reflected back to us in some way. Not because it's inherently true, because obviously you aren't unlovable or unworthy, but that is the belief that you're putting out. So the universe is reflecting that back to you. So if you are someone like I previously was, who has a lot of insecurities and feels very needy in relationships and gets attached to people very easily, then I would really, really recommend just bringing your energy back to yourself and really focusing on trying to heal yourself instead. And the funny thing is, the ironic thing is that if you do that and you do cultivate this new self-love, that these people that you feel needy for now will likely come back to you because you'll switch the energy dynamic around. So that's the whole paradoxical thing of this. Once you love yourself and don't need anyone, that is when they come. So thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all the best in manifesting your dream partner.